Welcome back to the New Earth Business Podcast. I am here with Zak Avery, who I have been trying to pin down for quite a while now. I feel like this is the conversation that we never had, and I'm so excited to dive deep with all of the topics that we both know and love: conscious business, nature connection, medicine, altruism, sustainability, all of it. So I've managed to pull a little bio off a website here, and I'm just going to read it to you so our audience knows who we're talking to, and then we're going to go into what it is you do, why you're here, your purpose, and your unique medicine. So Zak is an event producer, community builder, Menswork facilitator, and nature-based practitioner. His work has largely focused on sustainability, fashion, and community-oriented events. Zak runs a co-creative men's rites of passage pilgrimage called the Menspedition. I love that name, by the way. And is the co-founder and co-director of Medicine Festival. And if you've not been to Medicine Festival, come this year. It's in August. It's a not-for-profit, alcohol-free gathering to inspire authentic connection, regeneration for people and planet. Now, Zak's passion lies in interweaving communities, bringing cultures and inspiring a deeper understanding of how to tread lightly and live harmoniously on our planet. Let's just breathe that in for a moment. Welcome, Zak, to the New Earth Business Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Emma. A joy to be here.
Yes. So I usually this question that I'm about to ask you, I usually put it at the end of my podcast, but it feels right to drop it in at the beginning. So the question is, what does New Earth Business mean to you?
New Earth Business is a step forward in the way that we operate in regards to business. It's a step away from the reductionist lens that traditional capitalist structures have. And it's a step into authenticity with the work we're doing and creating and building through our lives. And in many cases, that means that it is deeply interwoven into the work we do, the stuff we're passionate about, infusing that into the way that we also make money. And it is in alignment with our values and the values of sustaining Earth and treading lightly on this Earth. And so weaving that into the work we do day to day, addressing the easy pieces like our triple bottom line in our supply chains and ensuring that there is no environmental or human, social, ecological impact from the work we're doing. But it's this work that really sings to our soul, the fire deep within our belly yearns to create, our internal compass directs us towards. And it's a way of working together harmoniously, collaboratively, collectively to support one another. There's a big piece that always comes up for me around separation. And at the moment, we work in a way that drives forth competitive individualism, essentially, where my gain trumps your needs, and if I can have more and more acorns for myself, it doesn't matter if you don't. And it's kind of a zero-sum game in that regard. And so I think kind of New Earth Business is working towards all of these different pieces, societally, ecologically, environmentally, and that doesn't just keep the economic benefits of business structure as the priority. And so just kind of stepping into this new way of being. And I think a lot of that revolves around kind of localization. A lot of that revolves around dispelling this myth that you must exchange your time for money. And for many people, that looks like working for themselves and birthing things into existence that they're happy to. It's about leaving a legacy that you're proud to leave and waking up determined and going to bed satisfied doing it. Something like that.
Yes. I hear you. I see you. That is so welcome. It's so incredible to be having these conversations with people now, something that I felt quite alone with in, hearing you repeat back to me those things that I've been wishing companies to think of and say and wake up to. I love the piece, especially about turning that passion into purpose, and that creative fire in your belly, and being able to channel that into something that not only is great for the planet, but is also sustains you and creates a legacy. How would you say that you're doing that with the work that you do at the moment?
I'd like to think I'm trying to do it in many ways, and I guess like 5 or 6 years ago when medicine started and other stuff, and I started to be able to sustain myself a little bit through it. It shifted from this piece that Bill Plotkin speaks about, which is the survival dance and the sacred dance. And when your survival dance takes up 90% of your time, you can't really be in your sacred dance. And I think finally I've come into this space of being able to commit my time and energy to the stuff that I love and that sustains me in a great way. And so I'd like to think that there's an element of that within all the projects, and I'm a kind of prolific starter, not so much a finisher. I spin the plates and then I kind of like find another plate to spin. Blessing and a curse in many ways. And so I'd like to think most of the projects I'm working on in some way, shape, or form, or rather in most ways, shapes and forms, I'd like to think are giving back, giving opportunities to people, communities, individuals, organizations, whether that's an opportunity to delve deeper into themselves, to better understand and know themselves, and to peel back the layers of self-loathing and trauma and whatever it may be in some capacity, whether it's small or big, but also allows people to step into a space of really being in community and being in spaces that facilitate and welcome them as they are, but guide their metamorphosis, their transformation. And so, I'd like to think that all of them encompass an element of that. Very much none of my projects have ever really been about profit. I kind of find it hard to make money a focus, and it's a shift I'm in. And I'm really wanting to start looking after myself financially and sustaining myself in that way. But it will never overcome the yearning to be in service in a good way and to do something that I feel proud of. And so in some ways it would be great to shift that balance slightly, but in other ways I'm completely fulfilled, sustained, resourced, and really love the work I do. And it's really beautiful to be in community-based projects where there's actually regular feedback. I think part of my ego gets really resourced from, more so than receiving a big check, someone coming up and being like, that was a really powerful transformation experience for me, is the thing that keeps me going and drives me to want to do more of it. So infusing it in different ways and areas in my projects, and the sustainability stuff, particularly the land and earth-based stuff and kind of human capital piece, was a really big focus of my earlier projects in fashion, really outlining the impact that we're having on the planet through these production lines and through these linear production lines and kind of reductionist systems. And that shifted a little bit more. There's this quote that I love that always comes out around Gustav Speth, saying that he used to think that the biggest problems the planet faced were biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse and climate change, and he thought science could resolve them, but he's kind of realized that actually it's greed and apathy that are the issues that we face. And so it's this cultural and spiritual kind of revolution that we really need to address these problems. It's the difference between being curative and preventative, slapping a plaster on it or stopping them falling in the first place. And so I think that's maybe why some of my work has shifted more into shifting the way that we perceive the world and our relationship with the natural world and the earth and one another, and this idea of separation, healing that wound that's kind of intrinsic in our culture as well.
Yes, very much so. And this podcast is all about educating people on how businesses are actually closing that separation gap, and learning how to really listen to the land and tune into what she desires for us to do. Like how do we work with you, Pachamama? How can we become the channel for great things to happen here and make heaven on earth now?
Deeply listening, deeply inquiring, and being in service and getting out of your own way sometimes is the hardest piece, but tuning into what is needed in this time.
Yeah. And you mentioned about like the flow of reciprocity in terms of money and finance at the moment. And it's really, really interesting to hear you talk about this, because a lot of my listeners are entrepreneurs, founders, they're building something. And when we are building sustainable soul-led businesses, like that monetary return, it becomes like, it's not the main focus. It's like the second focus. However, we live in a capitalist society. We need to get paid. We need to put food on the table. And just something that I'm kind of workshopping for myself at the moment is, because of all my skills in media and branding and marketing and all of this, and then also going through my own big healing journeys, I'm looking at calling myself more of a consultant, because I've got those different angles that I can see a business from, rather than a coach that is helping somebody in that way. Just wondering if this is something that you have maybe thought of yourself, because I know that you literally have so many skills and gifts. Is this something that you would be interested in stepping into?
It's really interesting that you frame it that way. Like you say, it's like having built up all these skills from the ground up and failed forwards and made the mistakes on your own projects so other people don't have to. And yeah, very recently, actually, a few consultancy things have popped up. And it's really awesome to be able to, like, I guess, digest and refine and give some really potent advice to people, that's direct and from experience, so very much so, actually. I think it's a great way to go, where and as and when it's needed, I guess, and as these opportunities emerge. And the reality is, it always comes at the right time and when it's needed, and it for me, as for you, I'm sure, and many people kind of in these walks of life, it needs to be completely aligned, and align with your ethics and your values for you to really commit and contribute to it. But it's very much a path, for sure, and I'm sure more of those will come. And medicine's been a really great, I guess, platform for my work and all of our work, I guess, as an organization and as a team. And so really great stuff regularly comes through that, and I'm incredibly resourced through those connections that appear through it. That for me is like absolutely enough, or more than enough, in an abundance, in fact. But yes, the consultancy route is really valuable and super important, as you say, and can save other people a lot of time and money, and therefore it's a really good value exchange.
Definitely something that I'm exploring this year too. We'll compare notes. So I'm wondering, when was the first time that you experienced a profound connection to nature? Was it like way back in your youth, or talk to me a bit about this?
See, I guess there's like two pieces there. There's like profound connection to the divine as a whole. It happened at a slightly younger age, and the realization that I am part of everything, and God lies within me. I am God, God is me, and we are all that. And this kind of satori numinous metaphysical awareness of spirit and soul, and that whole beast. But the connection to the land actually came, that a deep connection to the land came much later, I think. And I'd spent, I guess, a lot of time in certain spaces and events and doing stuff digitally. And it was actually really lockdown that the nature piece landed fully and wholly and deeply for me. And I'd always been connected to the land. I'd always really appreciated nature and the natural world, and read a lot about it. But I think this more visceral and embodied experience of connection to the land happened in Cornwall throughout lockdown, reading Bill Plotkin's book Soulcraft, and the idea of vision questing and eco-psychology and framing nature as a teacher, and how we can be in this reciprocity, this dance, this communion with the land. And I just had way more time and space, I think. For me, it's always been like, the commotion of the strategic mind and work and progress and projects, and this yearning for approval and everything that I get through my work, I guess, that's tied to my history and my childhood. And I think in lockdown, I had some really deep moments of just sitting and listening and being, and having space, and having the framing and the context of Bill Plotkin and other books that I read, Overstory and others that are all woven into the land. And it was in that moment that I committed to studying eco-psychology and committed to doing vision questing, and really began my journey of immersing myself in nature, as opposed to previously just more appreciating it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wild. I've heard a similar story from from a lot of my friends, and me included. I spent time in North Wales on the island of Anglesey where my parents live, connecting into the grids there, and meditating every day on this little patch of land outside my mum and dad's house. And by the time I left 3 months later, there was a fairy ring of mushrooms where I've been sitting.
Wow.
And I started to channel light codes, and yeah, profound things happened when we gave ourselves that space. Because I imagine before the lockdown, you were like probably busy with projects back to back, and then it was like, especially in the creative industries, all my film work just disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a real blessing, wasn't it? You know, like to have the space and time forced upon us, and inability to connect with others, just like an opportunity to turn inward and to what we all have and know, which is the earth that lies beneath us. And I think also having the opportunity to be in beautiful places, you know, for me, Cornwall, similarly, like this little stone circle, or more, we called it the hearthstone, this giant stone in the middle of a field with like this ring around it. It felt like a really beautiful portal and sacred space. And similarly, Anglesey, you know, it's one of my favorite places in these isles. Bryn-Clefdy, the burial chambers, and you know the history of the Druids, the proto-Druids and stuff on that isle is like really potent. And so being in these spaces that allow us to really tap in, and it's really important. And I'm really grateful that that opportunity arose for us, because for many it didn't, you know, and some people were stuck in very different situations. And yeah, but I think it's been a great catalyst for change for a lot of people, and not just people like us that were already kind of like on that path of this kind of connection and way of being, but like, you know, people that have spent their lives in offices that now have more time at home and with their family and with the land, and they're going on walks each day to you know, decompress. And I think a lot of people have had a recalibration internally in regards to their relationship with it, and for that I am very grateful.
Yeah, me too. So let's talk men's work, and in particular, when did you get into men's work? Was there like did you have a moment? Did you kind of have a breaking point where you were like, I need this? How did it flow?
Well, my first experience of men's work was actually through Rebel Wisdom. I was invited along to join one of their retreats, and I attended that, and I thought it was really lovely. There was a lot of talking in ways I hadn't done before. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, and it was a really lovely container, and I got a lot from it and made some really beautiful, deep connections with the brothers there. But it wasn't at that point I was like, yes, this is something I really love and feel the world needs quite in the way that I do now. And if I'm honest with you, I kind of stepped into it unknowingly in some way, shape, or form. The first Menspedition we did, we actually just traveled out to Snowdonia as a group of men and wanted to hike a mountain with brothers. A group of us friends, some friends of friends, but just a collection of men that wanted to be in nature together. And that weekend ended up being very much co-created, and we put in some elements of sharing circles and a few pieces of practice and workshops, but it was not really a men's work trip. It was just an exploration in the natural world and hiking mountains, and it was just so deeply powerful and transformative for all of us. And I've been tapping into some things happening with other men's work communities here and in the US online. And I left that completely like elated, super fulfilled, with a really strong brotherhood of 25 men that were like in contact every day and supporting each other and checking in online and attending each other's events. And really just like a brotherhood was born in that moment. And I was like, wow, like I really want to do more of this work. And so from then we kind of organically, in a container that doesn't really have, we try and not have it as like a teacher student kind of energy. It's kind of like we're collectively exploring this and relying on the group to bring through the wisdom and their offerings. But very much we started to weave in more of a program and offerings. And I started doing more trainings with Band of Brothers and Mankind and all these other organizations, and attending a lot more of them as I realized the power and the transformation in these spaces, particularly working with some brothers that had completely transformational experiences just being heard by other men, sometimes not even in big processes or facilitated exercises, just even being in that space and feeling like they could be honest and vulnerable and open around men was so deeply transformative for so many of them. And so it's evolved, and we've done many more, and it's like we're developing more of a program and a schedule and more offerings, and I'm attending many more of these men's work communities each with different ways of holding it, every single one valid and beautiful, and different frameworks and modalities. But yeah, just so clear to me that the world needs us right now. Men need to have communities that support them and stop living lives of quiet desperation and insular, and start dispelling the narrative of these masculine toxic traits that everyone subconsciously embodies through childhood, through parents, through whatever it may be, their conditioning at school and work, and step into this space of really coming back into our animus, as Carl Jung puts it, the feminine that lies within us. And so, yeah, I could talk about it for a long time. There's loads there, but it really landed for me semi-recently in that regard, and has just been a kind of auspicious journey of more of it occurring, and people really enjoying it and coming back, and people coming in to support more. And it's just it's been effortless completely, and feels like it really fulfills this yearning deep within my soul to be in this space of transformation. And without a year of organizing like the festival, it's much more a space that I'm in too and can enjoy as well. So yeah, it's really beautiful.
Well, it looks very exciting. All of the content that I see on your social media, it's definitely up my street. I'm a bit of an adventurer. I'm an ex-snowboarder, and I used to, hike mountains for fun. And so like that kind of camaraderie really speaks to my inner masculine. And I'm like, oh, we need to do some women's work like this too. I'm interested to know, you mentioned the divine feminine coming in. Like, how does that feminine essence weave into the men's work, like on Menspedition? Can you give me an example of how that will come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like the entirety of the container is framed around welcoming that part of ourselves in, I guess. And so even just beginning with like authentic, open expressions of things like your biggest fear, right? And like opportunities to grieve and cry and fully express is a really big piece that men don't feel they have scope or permission to do. And so it's giving men permission to fully show up with all their emotions, and to not suppress them as they used to, but like to fully welcome them. And so like having that softening in the container. And I think the really simple piece that's always really potent, and not every container will do this in the same way we do, but is like every day having a sharing. Every day, every man gets an opportunity to speak to every other man about how he's feeling. Maybe we frame it, maybe it's around like, sex and what that means in your life, or your relationship with your mother or your father, or maybe it's around shame. But just having a space to really bring these pieces is super, super potent, and always brings up a lot. And so many men have never shared the things they share in these circles, in these spaces. And there's many pieces, I guess, I could allude to, and sometimes we like to keep some of it a bit of a secret or a surprise if people join. But it's it's just about peeling back the armor and the layers of that, and like fully bringing yourself and allowing these emotions to come through, and not just that, like coming into a healthy and mature relationship with them. And often men, I guess, don't do the same, handle situations interpersonally the same way as we do as men, as women. And there's things around clearing and accountability that can be really powerful processes that I learned within a band of brothers. And there's a bunch of like somatic processes as well, things that you really get into your body to move things through and move energies through. So there's like a whole breadth of things that I think are really beautiful and unique to this work. And often the women are really wanting to do some of the stuff, I guess, they see in men's work, like the really somatic screaming or releasing. And I often hear that women are yearning for that in their women's work. And there's loads of it out there that's doing that too. And if you want to do this adventure stuff, some of the partners of a bunch of us guys involved at the Menspedition are running a Menspedition. So yeah.
I will look out for that, and we'll put all of the stuff in the show notes.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm interested to, well, this is a question that comes to me through my coaching clients, just through conversations, is a lot of my female friends identify as female who have male partners are on their spiritual journey. They feel like that they're at a certain level of journey, and their male partner isn't. And I just want to like riff on this topic because I think it's quite a juicy one. Like, I remember when I let go of that in my relationship, and that was such a beautiful and profound moment for me. And so I'm just wondering, like, what your views are on this.
It's a really interesting piece. And if I'm honest, I probably went through that with my partner. She's a little older than me and she's amazing and a psychologist and all these things and has done all this work. And I think when we came into kind of partnership or the early days of that, like she felt a slight imbalance. Even though I was very much on my journey, I'd like to say that I was doing the work, if you want to put it like that. But I think there was a lot from it being my first relationship and so on that there was there for me to learn. And I think it's just like you say, it's really often a dynamic where the woman has either made more space and time to do this work, or kind of naturally in some ways, not to completely generalize, women are just a bit more mature and in touch with that piece and do that reflective work and notice their patterns and do all they can to address that and to work through that. And like 70% of people in therapy are female. So it's these kind of pieces where I think men are just in this habitual pattern and I guess socio-political kind of framing where they just like have a laugh and crack on and get back to work, and it's all banter and it doesn't really matter. And I think like that's just inherently I guess like underpinned in our society as it has been. And I think that shift is just emerging. And I think women have just always made more space and time for that. And also like often notice and recognize these things. I think as men, often there can be an issue in our relationship or some disparity somewhere or somehow. And men often want to just like not really talk about it and get it over as quick as possible and just crack on. And women tend to want to bring that. And obviously, this is broadly speaking, right? There's very much different dynamics in every relationship, and it's not always like this. And I think men are just coming into this space. This is why I think the Menswork thing is such like a boom right now, and there's such a yearning for it. Is that like men are just starting to come into this space of being like, it's okay for me to do this work and to have this space and to be this vulnerable, and to bring that piece of me in which I never give space or airtime, that lies within this self-loathing or this like suppression of emotion, whatever it may be. Men are just stepping into that now and being allowed, I guess, being given permission, time to explore that. And so I think like you see in society right now, women coming into power and Jacinda being the prime minister and the best in the world in New Zealand, and this whole shift that we have now coming into equality even further, I believe, and women stepping into more positions of power, men stepping more into their vulnerability. It's like the anima and the animus are kind of being evoked in the other genders. And I think it's a big part of this kind of new earth paradigm that you speak of, is this shift, this energetical power shift that's happening. And so I think we're just like in the early phases of that. And it's just time and space. And I'd like to think that in 15 years, when this work is much more accessible and has been reached by many more brothers and sisters, that things will hopefully feel in balance a little more. But we've got thousands of years of history and trauma and patterns, to heal. And I think it's just a slow process. But I can really sympathize for the women that are in these situations. And it's hard to know exactly what to do, because you can't take a horse to water and make it drink, that whole phrase. These guys need to find that and want that themselves. And people often turn up to these spaces like, oh, my partner sent me here, and they get a lot from it too, but there's often a lot of that reluctant man energy because they think it's a bit woo-woo and not for them. So slowly in essence.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. I was like hanging off every word you were saying there, but like I was getting it channeled to me. Something on the sort of counter side of that I've been delving into recently is this transition between the archetype of maiden to mother. And when we're as a woman in wounded maiden, that's when we're blaming and it's the men's job to do this and that and poor me, and the world needs to be different to fit around with me. But as females step more into that space of being a mother, and this isn't necessarily to like have a child, but it's stepping through that portal of being able to hold what is going on, being able to be grounded through the process that that your partner, if they're a male, is going through, and to just really anchor that, and both give each other the space to step into their new archetypes. And the more we like turn, I had like this visualization of everyone just turning and looking to the ground. It's like that is where the information is coming from. And as the earth opens more to us, we open more to it, and vice versa, right? And then all of the codes are coming in, and we get to experience the feminine in such a different way, which you're doing so beautifully in the work that you do.
Absolutely. It's really beautiful to hear you say that, and like using the archetypal map as like a framework, you know. And it's a really interesting one with that. Some people really get a lot from it, and it's like gospel to them, and they use that map for decoding everything that's happening within their psyche internally. You know, these pre-personal dispositions that they can really relate to, and others kind of just use it as a guide. And I am really attached to these archetypes and how we work with them. But as you say, like, it's really, you're at the same time, we're all coming from the same source, right? We're listening to the land, this peace that lies within us and that connects us intrinsically. And it's about like, how do you decipher that and not use these as map to be a perfect man or woman, but use them as worthy ideals to follow and to be a guide for us. And yeah, it's really beautiful that there can be, I guess, even like shadow and mature versions of these that people can really relate to. And then it just gives them this moment of acceptance that this is part of their pre-personal disposition. As I say, like, this is okay. This is part of being a human in this world, and better learning to navigate that. And yeah, but at the end of the day, as you express, it's like all coming back to nature. And I feel like we can tap back into the natural world and get a lot of what we need if we can find space and time to deeply listen. And that's why for me it's like this piece around combining kind of men's work with the natural world, and having space and time for both to bring their medicine through in these spaces. But yeah, I really yearn to learn more about the feminine archetypes as well. And obviously there's hundreds of different archetypal maps, and there's Jungian ones with like all of these overarching ones, and they overlap in many ways, and they're not necessarily different. But I now have a yearning to learn more about the feminine, and actually experience the dynamic of bringing men and women into spaces together. I find it really interesting that we're doing all this men's work and all this women's work, and that's really important, and there's a huge space for it and a need for it. But there's really potent alchemy when you bring men and women together in these spaces of like deep surrender and expression and permission to fully be and to explore these pieces, because we're very much in the dynamic of sexual energy and relationships and whatever it may be. And so there's a few that my partner's been to that do this really beautifully, women holding space for men and so on. And that, I think, is the next chapter for me, like the bringing in this whole new dynamic. And I'm really excited to explore that in my own work.
Yeah, I feel that as well. I'm definitely riding that wave with you. I did my first like men and women's event at my house at the end of last year, and it was outside, it was in nature, it was around a fire. I did bring everyone in under the guise of conscious business. However, it was however we spoke a little bit about conscious business, but I did these really beautiful practices where we used the whole garden as an energetic space. And I got people to stand. So I said, right, this is your masculine energy in business, and this is your feminine energy in business. And we walked around like conscious walking meditation for a bit. And then I said, land where you think you are on the scale. Are you like really, driving things forward, pushing things fast and trying to make things happen, like this upward thrusting? Or are you like sitting back and waiting for things to happen, which is in the feminine space? And just to like, I give you this visual because it made me laugh so much. When I looked over to the feminine space, and it was men and women, everyone was like lay down like lions, like lionesses basking in the sun. And then in the masculine side, everyone was like stood very straight with their hands on their hips.
The energy manifesting through the body, Yeah, it's God, it's really interesting as well. Like as you bring that, and this is something that always comes up in these spaces too, is like the like dualistic lens of masculine and feminine as well. It came up in the last one I attended that I was filming, and there was this guy felt really strongly. He felt really a real rejection to the terms masculine and feminine. And
Mhm.
how can something be inherently masculine and something feminine? You know, however you want to yin and yang, or like, you know, Shiva and Shakti, however you want to frame that, he felt like this real aversion to anything being labeled as masculine or feminine. And it's a really interesting piece when you kind of come back out to the kind of like the non-dualistic lens and Brahma. It's an interesting one, and I think we're like really in the journey of like cracking the yoke of this like the kind of duopoly, I guess, in not just politics and everything else where we're completely separated, but in the way that we perceive masculine and feminine traits. And like we were trying to express, and I guess the leader of the space was that it's just a framing, and this is just like a philosophy and a guide, because inherently God, I don't even know how to say this without getting myself in a muddle around what I think about it, but it's a nuanced and complex argument, I guess, right? Particularly as you enter the space of non-binary and this whole world of everything in between the masculine and the feminine, or the, you know, the male-bodied and female-bodied, and then there's a whole spectrum within that. And so yeah, it's just an interesting dance. And another thing that brings up question and debate in these spaces is around who is welcome. Is it male and female bodied people? And there's a real dance there that I'm like yet to fully figure out and understand. And I think many of us in the space are still exploring that. And so, you know, if you have any thoughts, reflections, advice, or anyone that we can speak to make sure that these spaces are as inclusive as possible, and allow as many people to be entering spaces to do this work. It's a journey and an inquiry that I'm on, and I'm sure many of us are. And who knows when we'll figure it all out. Maybe we'll constantly just be on a journey of trying. But
Well, I was actually hosting your queer circle at Medicine Festival with Chris this year.
yeah, oh, lush.
So I identify as queer, and I see the energy of masculine and feminine, and I almost don't like to, I like to call it essence. For me, it's an essence. And I see it as two spirals. If you're watching on the video, you can see my hands, and the spirals are kind of going opposite and in towards the same point in the middle. And for me, that helps me to realize we are one and the same, and they're different essences that you get. It's a choice. It's like we get to lean into the different ones for different superpowers. We get to become the receiver. We get to become the creator. We get to become all of these different essences. And some people are more leaning towards one or the other, and that is totally okay. And it comes back to this piece of acceptance, and how can we accept ourselves fully? And can we accept, once we accept ourselves fully, we accept everything else in others. And I don't know how we do that, but we keep doing the work that we're doing to get to that point of like deep radical self-acceptance. And when we get there, then everything just becomes one.
Thank you for that beautiful framing, and the spiral will stay with me forever. I really love that visualization, and acceptance. It's so simple yet so hard.
Daily
The paradox.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emma.
No worries. Okay, so I've got a few more little business bits just to pull out of you, mainly for our listeners who are founders, entrepreneurs, creating their own new earth businesses, and could really do with some of your advice. So if you were to create a list of values or traits for conducting conscious business, what would that look like?
Values or traits. First and foremost, my advice is experience dusted off as advice. So take it as you please. For me, like, and I guess this comes from just like the heart space piece that for me drives everything. Like whenever you're interacting with someone in any way, shape, or form, business or not, like being fully from your heart and treating everyone with good intention and being really transparent about that. Like for me, I think the thing that's been most successful in my whole career has just been like making my best efforts to be as accepting and as friendly to everyone, every person on the team, no matter what their role is, and if I know their name or I don't, like making space for them to be heard, seen, and appreciated has been like one of the greatest gifts. And I think it's very natural for me. I can't help but do that. But I notice people within our teams or whatever it may be that don't quite have that as naturally, and it can like create these subtle interpersonal rifts that then affect things later on, and it's like it's a subtle energy, but it makes a big difference. And so I guess to boil that down to a value, it's like, you know, treating everyone equally, equality in expression and opportunity, I guess, in that regard, is like such a big piece. And I guess it falls into like compassion, really, and having compassion for all the people involved in the different processes in the organization and in the business. And if you make someone feel seen and appreciated, then they're going to like work way harder and want to support you way more, and, you know, value you more as a human. And then you both end up feeling better. Everyone's working harder and more in more alignment, and it just creates these healthy systems, processes, and organizational kind of structures, I guess. It's a really big one, and it's like even like being in that way around communications around things like money and other stuff. It just brings a softer energy to the space, much unlike conventional business that's ruthless. And so like it's kind of obvious, but it just feels like such a principle that can sometimes be overlooked, I guess, in the march to value oneself more. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but there can be a trade-off and a sacrifice, and you can do both. Yes. And integrity, God, I guess these are quite similar and fairly aligned, but like knowing that I'm integrity in what I'm doing let me re-say that. Knowing I'm in integrity in what I'm doing, like lights this fire in my belly that is so strong and so powerful that I can like work through all of the failures and mistakes and issues and struggles and long days, and it's it doesn't give me any doubts. And I think we all know, right? I'm kind of the idea of manifestation and thoughts fully affecting everything in your life. I've got a nuanced and interesting perspective on that's a wider conversation. But if you have a doubt in what you're doing, absolutely that has a direct impact on the work you're doing and the prayer you're bringing to the world, whatever it may be. And so just knowing that I'm in integrity in what I'm doing means that there's not any scope for anyone to question what I'm doing or the values that we uphold within the organization. And therefore you always feel like fully in your power, in your most resourced place to bring this gift through to the world. And it's a really, really big piece. And, you know, the piece that Bill Plotkin frames, again, coming back to him, is around getting out of the way of like the grandiose vision that you're here to save the world, and coming back into this idea, this incendent idea of the soul's message, and the soul having a unique gift it really wants to bring through to the world, to fit in a wider constellation and to bring the gift to the community, so collectively you can address these bigger issues. And it's a really subtle piece, but it really shifted a lot for me in my early days of like having this huge grandiose visions of my life and what I wanted to be, into actually being like, I'm playing a little piece in this, and I'm doing it with humility and with joy and with passion and with my values at the forefront of what I'm doing, and that's enough. And it was like the realization that whatever I bring is enough really helped me kind of pull back these patterns and these stories that I was living up to, given my kind of past situations. So very convoluted answer there. I'm not sure if you can refine that, but yeah, integrity, compassion, and realism, perhaps.
Yeah. I'm also hearing radical kindness.
Radical kindness, yes.
Yeah. Really beautiful. I feel like I'd love to be on a team with you. I'm also feeling into why do we, I think we need to create this love languages for business.
Wow, I really love that.
Love languages for business. Maybe there's something that, I mean, what really helps me is to know, so I'm neurodiverse, ADHD, dyslexia, all of those things. And when I'm going to work with people now, I kind of almost give them a bit of a manual. I'm like, I need things delivered to me through one platform. Like, just email me, or just don't WhatsApp me, email me, and Google Doc me. this is how I work, or I'm the type of person that if I haven't had a bit of praise for a few weeks, then I will kind of go off. I'll go off the idea of wanting to do something. So yeah, maybe there's a space to be explored in business where we get to use our astrology, our human design, our love languages, and our neurodiverse spectrum to be able to like create manuals for ourselves.
Yeah, it's such a kind of an obvious piece, and I guess like, but like so overlooked, you know. It's like just make people feel loved. Staff retention is one of the biggest problems in conventional business, you know. It's like just like training new people and then disappearing, and you know, it's incredibly expensive and unnecessary, I guess. And yeah, just making people feel loved and seen and appreciated, and gifting, you know, with your time and your presence as much as perhaps physically, is so invaluable. And like the greatest gift is the gift of giving, because it gives back to you and resources you. And so for me, it's just a constant cup filling process through doing that. But there's a limit, I guess. You can also very much burn yourself out and be too nice and too kind, and then not be, you know, respected or appreciated and trampled over. So there's a real, as always, it's nuanced, and there's a dance to getting that right, I guess. But constantly in that inquiry.
Forever in that dance, in that interplay. Okay, so we're gonna start to wrap up now. Last question. What is your big vision for the future? Last massive question.
Is this just to clarify, is this personal vision or vision for what the world may be and what I would like to see in it? Because they're quite different.
I think go with what your heart says. What do you want to take from it?
My vision when I was younger was really clear around what I wanted to do, and it's become a little bit less, maybe not clear, because I know the direction and the energy it's infused with, but less about how it practically manifests. And I think that just feels much better to me, leaving it open and just knowing where I'm channeling that energy. And so perhaps I won't speak so much to that point. But the thing that really rings true to me, and it's actually, I got a tattoo on the back of my neck when I was 19, when I went through a process and a journey of mania and depression. And it was this idea of absolute equality and opportunity. It's an A and an E. And I just had this hope that we would come to a place where we no longer think like having all the money and all the stuff is cool, and society shifts to a way where it's like if you have too much, you're selfish and you're perceived as that. And it's no longer really cool to have all the resources yourself and to have all the flashy cars and the flashy house. And actually it's really cool to give back. And all of a sudden there's this big shift where, you know, people want their legacy not to be that they built the biggest and best thing and they won capitalism, but they want their legacy to be that they gave back, they supported, they sustained, they held the big V vision, the vision that the earth and spirit was yearning for you to fulfill, the one that gives back and nourishes communities, supports and sustains life, inspires others, the legacies that really feel important. And I think we're entering a new phase, a new era of legacy, and what people yearn to be remembered for. You look at people like Mr. Beast that's giving away literally hundreds of millions of pounds, and that's how he's getting famous, and he loves it. And it's like really beautiful, this idea of like not just being, you know, it's not just philanthropy, but like deeply believing that you can support and sustain others through the work you do each and every day, and having that as your guiding principle, your vision, your North Star, I think is something that we're entering. And I know for me, it's absolutely the most important thing. Maybe there's like an egoic piece there, as there is with all of us, because that's what drives us to be humans and to work and to live, you know, around wanting to be remembered for doing good stuff. But actually just like inherently just wanting to help others with no benefit to yourself, right? Just to know that you're giving back to those that need it and to those that are suffering, and the realization that we're just incredibly privileged, particularly here in the West, to be even just like I'm privileged within this society to be doing the work that I love and waking up determined and going to bed satisfied, let alone in the grand scheme of like the whole of the Earth's population. Like my privilege is phenomenal, and it's like, how can I use that privilege for good, and how can I be in service really from my heart, like in a really authentic, true way. And that's something that I think and I hope that we're in a shift towards in this society, you know, away from the march for material and technological advance, and coming back to how can we feed and nourish the future 7 generations, how can we sustain, you know, our biodiversity, how can we change the earth to a place where there isn't so many people with refugee status and without homes over their heads and in poverty across the world. Because for me, it blows my mind that we're investing so much money into other stuff and not into equal opportunity. And it's a very, again, complex piece, but I just trust that we're going to enter a space where we all come into a bit more awareness of our interconnectedness, and particularly those people in power at the top, and we can start to shift our focus and our priorities and live in a much more harmonious way. And it's very idealistic, but it's you've got a hope for that, I guess, right? You know, and at the moment it looks like we're going into like extreme separation and polarization, and there'll be this one side that's super committed to this vision and this other side that's completely juxtaposing that, and that feels like where it's going right now. And there's just a deep trust that we can feed all of these. We can either, you know, feed the CEOs of companies loads of ayahuasca or shoot them with DMT darts, or I'm joking, but you know, just for people to come into that space of awareness of it all. And who knows if we'll get there, but that's my dream.
Oh, thank you. That is so, I'm receiving that, and my cells are tingling. You are living your vision, and thank you so much for going there. For it's hard work what you do, and to hold that, because you're not only holding it for yourself, but you're holding it for everybody else that isn't quite there yet. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for seeing me. It's exhausting but fulfilling at the same time.
I had a whole question about how are you balancing like work and life, but we'll leave that for now.
Well, there's not so much balance right now. In summary, I do too much work and not enough life, and I'm trying to find that balance. And that's a constant dance for me. You know, it's hard to do what you love and be so passionate and not have a line between work and play, and it's all just living and life, and you're just consumed. So trying to find the balance. I can't give any advice. Definitely can't give advice on that because I'm not so good at it.
Well, what we'll do, we'll come back in a year's time and we'll check in on balance, and perhaps you have found equilibrium.
Perhaps.
All right, Zak, how can people find you? What are your links? What are your platforms that you're on?
We have Medicine Festival website, medicinefestival.com, Menspedition website, menspedition.com, which may be changing to like Journeys of Belonging to make it unisex. But and then just like me personally, just my name, Zak Avery, on most platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, all that fun stuff. And within Linktree, like links to all the events and stuff that we've got going on. We have a really great gathering in March, regenerative gathering, teaching people about tending the land and inoculating mushrooms and planting trees and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, that's happening too, and I'm really excited about it.
Primal Gathering, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to seeing you at all of the festivals and all of the things this year, and yeah, looking forward to our next deep dive. Thank you so much for coming on the New Earth Business Podcast.
Thank you so much, Emma, for you and all the work you do, and for hand fasting me at Stonehenge on solstice.
We didn't even go there. We're definitely doing a part 2.
Absolutely.